Hannah Murray on TRE in the afternoon.
Joining us on the line now is Sheila Schroeder, who has enjoyed a decades-long career in finance and is passionate about helping women navigate the financial challenges of everyday life. Her book, It's Time to Talk, A Woman's Guide to Navigating Money, is a hands-on guide to women's finance and money communication. Welcome to the show, Sheila.
Thank you very much, Hannah. I am delighted to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
It's a pleasure. It's lovely to have you. So tell me a little bit about your background and how you got into the world of finance.
Oh my gosh, we only have 40 minutes today, right?
A bit less than that, actually, but go on.
Exactly. Okay. So I've spent decades in finance. When I was at university, I learned about this thing called Wall Street, and I thought, oh, that's for me, and headed there right after university. And so that was really where I started to get my start. And then many years I spent in equity capital markets, which is essentially Japanese and Asian equities, selling those kind of stocks to large institutional investors. And what that means is everyone's got a pension fund, et cetera. Those pension funds invest in Japanese equities or U.S. equities, et cetera. And so I was an institutional broker, and I did that for a long time. And then I pivoted to working with individuals and families because I felt that I could take this knowledge and help people really better understand their personal finances. So that was my journey from sort of university to where I am right now.
Yeah. And throughout your career, have you been in the minority as a woman?
But of course.
And how has that been for you?
So, I'll say this. I have been in the minority as a woman. In the Asian and Japanese desks where I worked, there were a lot of women because they had studied Japanese or Mandarin, and that was their foot in the door. So that's how we got in. And even though it was predominantly men, I will say that generally speaking, my experiences working with those men was fantastic. And I felt that when I was on Wall Street, and I really think it's still very true, is if you are doing a good job, you could have green hair. They don't care what gender you are if you're making money for the firm.
Yeah.
So yes, a lot of men, but I don't feel like I had any issues with those guys. I loved working with them.
Oh, that's good. That's really good to hear. So why have you gone down the road of particularly focusing on women and helping women out with finance? Why do you think we maybe need that little bit of extra help?
Okay, that's a great question. There's two reasons. All the time that I was working on Wall Street, I ended up being the person who, let me go back a little bit. When I was 27 years old, I was working for a firm. I got laid off. Market downturn, bunch of people get laid off. And I thought that I'd been doing such a good job. I was putting money in my pension plan. I wasn't spending money I didn't have. But what I didn't have was an emergency fund. And so, sure, I got a bit of a severance. But I had to liquidate my pension fund, which back then wasn't a lot of money, but it was enough for me. It was needed money. So I liquidated my pension, which, by the way, if you liquidate your 401k, you have taxes and penalties. But it got me through. And when I found a new job, I realized I knew it was a huge financial mistake. And I realized that even though I worked in finance, I didn't actually know almost anything about personal finance. And they're very different educations. Understanding global finance is different than understanding personal finance. And I realized that I needed to educate myself. And I began this journey of self-education and taking more and more responsibility for myself. And that was my path. And I became that person on the desk where other people would come and say, hey, I know you know about this stuff. Can I ask you a question? So it was a very natural move for me to go from one area of finance to working with individuals. I found it incredibly gratifying work. And it was an area of expertise that I was interested in.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember as a child thinking, you know, when I grow up, I'll understand all about taxes and mortgages and things like that, as if you know, the ignorance or bliss of being a child and just assuming that it's something you'll automatically know and understand when you become an adult. But of course, that's not the case unless you go out of your way to try and understand it, or someone goes out of their way to explain it all to you. You could go throughout your whole life not really understanding how it all works.
Well, and Hannah, you know, there's so many negative repercussions to that mindset, right? And none of us are born with a chip in our brain that tells us about financial literacy. And when I say none of us, the men in our life are not implanted with a financial literacy chip.
No.
And yet they often take the reins for any number of reasons. Oh, I'll get this, I'll do it. Oh, I don't want to do it, so you do it. And so men are raised, I believe men in our society are raised with the assumption that they will be the breadwinner, right? If you could see me, you would see me doing air quotes right now, breadwinner. And it's not fair. I mean, understanding personal finance, having financial literacy is not a gender thing. Women, in fact, women often are better portfolio managers. But in the scheme of things, both men and women, and all of us in between, need to be able to understand how to manage our own money. And just because you're a man doesn't mean you have a leg up on understanding the topic.
No, absolutely, for sure. So where do you kind of recommend, other than obviously reading your book, for people who are listening to this, men or women, and going, yeah, that's me, I wish I understood a little bit more. Where do people start with this?
So the reason my book is called It's Time to Talk, A Woman's Guide to Navigating Money Conversations, is the premise of my book is if we don't talk about it, if it is a taboo, then how are we going to convey information to each other? Right? There are all kinds of, many people were raised saying, oh, you know, let's not talk about sex. Well, there are negative implications to not talking about sex.
Yeah.
Right? Same with, I've had so many people say to me, oh, you know, I'm a Midwesterner if you're an American. I'm a Midwesterner, we don't talk about money. Or I'm English, we don't talk about money. Or I'm, you know, green-haired people don't talk about money. And if you're not talking about it, that means typically you're not sharing information, you're not learning. So if you read through my book, I end by saying, okay, you've got this knowledge. Why don't you form, you know, what do you do next? Why don't you form what I would call a financial book club? And I'm not talking about reading the FT business section. What I'm talking about is maybe finding a novel. I'll go with Vanity Fair. A lot of Brits have read Vanity Fair, or they've read Dickens. Those books have a financial thread through them. And so on one hand, people think they need to be reading the Wall Street Journal or the FT. And instead, I suggest get together and read a novel that has some sort of financial thread through it and start talking about it. Gosh, how did this person not having access to any money? You know, you read anything by Jane Austen, and throughout every single one of her books is a woman who either has money or doesn't and needs to get it. And is she going to get it by getting married? And what are the consequences if she doesn't? Those are financial tethers. And I think that women getting together and talking about that character is a great way to talk about money without talking about my money or your money.
Yeah.
And right. And then you start to get more comfortable talking about this protagonist in the book. And you start to think, oh, well, I'm having this situation, or this is something that's impacting me. Could we learn about it together?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes sense. It's nice to learn about these things with other people, you know, find like-minded people who also don't understand it. And if you do it together, you can be asking each other questions as you're going along.
Absolutely. Another thing I recommend, especially as you're forming a group, and I'm pretty straightforward about this, I often say to people, you can talk about money without talking about numbers, which sounds kind of funny, right? Like, what do you mean? But I don't need to know how much money you have. You don't necessarily need to know how much I have. But you and I can have a conversation about, let's say we go for a walk and you say to me, I'm a little worried. Do I have enough to retire comfortably someday? And we can talk about, so what are you doing? Are you maxing out on your retirement savings every year? Or how are you thinking about, you're renting now? Do you think you want to buy? Or, gosh, do you think your parents might be leaving you something? Or do you think you might have to help your parents? So you start talking about it with one of your best mates and you hear, oh, gosh, Hannah, you're doing it this way. Sheila, you're doing it this way. And you might be doing something I had never heard about. And I'm like, oh, well, that seems kind of clever. Can you tell me more?
Yeah. Yeah.
How powerful is that?
Definitely. Yeah, it makes perfect sense to talk about it, doesn't it? Well, like anything in life, if you're not communicating, then there could be problems. So it makes perfect sense that we should be talking about these things to get a better understanding of it.
Well, it sounds, more and more people talking about financial literacy. I know the British government is talking about introducing more financial literacy in the schools. But I think it needs to be a global thing. We need people to feel that they can as comfortably talk about money as any other topic, because everything in our lives has a financial tether. And if you want to go to a better school, or, I often think about, and I have felt this myself, where I felt trapped. I grew up in the Midwest. I knew I wanted to live in the big city, whatever that meant to me. And I knew that to get from point A to point B, I probably had to go to university. And that was going to take money. So I didn't have a sophisticated sense of it, but I understood at a pretty young age that to get from point A to point B, I needed money to do it.
Yeah.
And I worked when I was young, et cetera. But as you start to put those dots together and you start to read about it and you think, oh, I could do that. And this book is all about, it's as accessible as one can be. It's led with a lot of storytelling. And my hope is that people read it and they read it either with a friend, or let's say you want to talk, you feel like you'd like to talk more with your husband about money, but it's awkward. Each of you read it and then have a money date, talk about, particular chapter or particular plan. But it's all about finding a bridge to open. That's probably the wrong metaphor, but finding a way to open the door to the conversation.
Yeah. I think it's really important, and I expect a lot of people, and this was myself for most of my adult life, go through life not really understanding or appreciating how much money is coming in each month and how much money is going out each month. All these, with rent or whatever, some of the big costs each month people are aware of, but so many of us sign up to little things that cost €5 a month, €12 a month, €7 a month, and you think, oh, that's nothing. But all these things add up. And I think it's really important for people to write down exactly what all their expenses are each month compared to what they're earning, and realize how much money they have to spend on food, restaurants, cinema, whatever it might be each month. And it may be a lot less than people think.
To your point, it's usually a lot less than people think. I think human psychology is, we think it's more coming in. And then at the end of the month, we're like, whoa, what just happened? And I think the other thing is, we live in a society where we tap our phones now to pay for everything.
Yeah.
Where just a few years ago, you would sign a credit card slip or you would pay out cash. And so if you had £100 in your wallet and you've done some grocery shopping and done all these things, and at the end of day 2, you have £25, you're like, whoa, I just spent £75 here. It's easy math that we're all used to. But if you're tapping all the time, I'll tap and I'll think, oh, how much was that? Where before we'd be like, how much is that? And then sign for it. It just registered, I think, in our minds differently
Yeah.
than if we're tapping all the time. It's so easy, I don't know. Sometimes I forget, where was I this morning? Did I really go to Gale's and spend $20 on something? And so I just think that it's so easy to lose awareness of how we're spending it, and just writing it down for a couple days can really raise awareness.
Yeah. Yeah, making lists about things can be really helpful. We talk about sometimes if you're trying to lose weight or understand how many calories you're consuming, it's really helpful to write it all down every time you eat something, whether it's a banana or a jelly sweet or whatever it might be. Write it down, and then at the end of the day, at the end of the week, you get a real understanding of what you're consuming. It's exactly the same with spending, isn't it?
It is. And, to that point, how much no one likes a diet, right? So writing it all down, I often would be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I ate 2 jelly donuts and I completely forgot about them, right? But that exercise is valuable. Another way to do it is to sit down and think, okay, I have X amount of money that's coming in. I know what my it's not your first paycheck, but you know what you're going to get at the end of the month, and do a bit of simple math. And there are guidelines. One should not be paying more than about 30% for their home, whether it's rent or mortgage, property tax, insurance, everything that constitutes shelter. A rule of thumb is that should not take up more than 30 or 35%. So do the calculations. And then you can say, oh, you know what? My rent fits. I'm doing well, or I should be spending X on savings, etc. And you start to get a percentage, and like, oh, I'm groceries for me. I eat, I don't know. I'm a vegetarian, so I don't eat a lot of meat. My food cost might be less, or I grow my own food. Then you start to get an idea of where you're spending, where you're not. And you may say to yourself, okay, I have this budget for food, and let's say it's 400 pounds, and think in your mind, okay, this is my budget, and I can spend it any way I want, but I'll be aware if I'm going to go over. And so you can either do it backwards, where you think, okay, this is how much I have, and I'm going to spend this percentage on food, or you can do it the other way, where you write everything down, add it all up, and think, oh, what does that equal? Either way, it's a way to raise awareness of where you're spending, and maybe where you can easily cut back, or gosh, I could spend more here, depending on what's important to you.
Yeah, I bet most people throughout their lives, I'm making an assumption here, correct me if I'm wrong in your experience, but I'm assuming that most people will only budget or have only budget at certain times in their life when they really don't have much money and they're really needing to watch their pennies, and they have to establish, okay, how much do we have for food shopping? How do we have any money left for activities, going for dinner, whatever it is you might like to do. I think if people are feeling a bit flush, or they're thinking they don't need to worry about money, they're not, in dire straits or anything, I'd assume most people in that situation don't budget at all and just go and spend because they feel like they can. They don't need to go, how much have we got for food shopping? They just spend and pay whatever it costs.
Absolutely. Okay, so that's true. We know that. Here's the potential negative ramification of that. Let's say you start out and you've worked a couple years, you're 25 years old, and you're thinking, wow, I seem to be spending more than I expected, because life creeps up on you, and the things, because you didn't have a money education. So you're like, oh, I'm paying all these expenses. I don't seem to have enough. I want to get a grip. So you're 25 years old. You start to get a grip to your description, right? And you're 30 or 35. You're making more money. And you think, oh, I'm flush. I'm great. I'm saving, etc. But the percentage you are saving when you're 25, if you're making more money at 35 and you don't raise that percentage saving, you are under saving. And so if you do your budget when you're 25, or you do your budget when you're in a pickle, right? Then, and you think, oh, I'm flush, so I can spend more. The danger is that as you accumulate as you're making more money, that you fail to plan for the future. And often when people make a certain amount, let's say some high water mark or their company goes public, something fantastic, big liquidity event, they think, oh, I'm good. But, in terms of life expectancy, when we're doing financial plans, we expect that 1 out of 2 in the couple, someone will live till they're 97.
Yeah.
And so if you're making a lot of money when you're 35, 45, or 50, and you're not putting as much as possible that makes sense for you, you may want to work until you're 70, but you may find that you're pushed out when you're 60. And so it's important to plan and sort of save when you're making the money, because we're not always in control of when we are going to stop working.
Yeah, for sure. So much good advice. And it's all, of course, in the book. If people want more advice on money and how to handle money and how to save money, and there's so much good advice. It's called It's Time to Talk, A Woman's Guide to Navigating Money Conversations. And it's by Sheila Schroeder, who we've been chatting with. The book is available on our website, tre.radio. Sheila, have you found over the years all the people that you've spoken to, particularly women, do they have the same kind of issues with money? Do the same things keep cropping up?
Thank you for asking me that. So the book, the first 5 chapters, is about the 5 fundamentals everyone needs to know, right? Budget, investment, retirement, debt, and savings. And Hannah, there are thousands of books that will walk you through those fundamentals, thousands of good books. I've included it because it gives you context for the second half of the book. So the second half of the book, you could buy it just to read 1 chapter, how to talk to your kids about money. Or you and your husband, you're either going to I think it's a great wedding gift because you're getting married and maybe you don't have a lot of practice talking with your spouse about money. So it walks you through how to have a money date and how to set up a financial foundation in terms of talking about it. Or let's say you're thinking about, I always say, if you're thinking about leaving your spouse, the last person you want to tell is that person. Instead, go find a financial advisor and a family law attorney and understand what your options are.
Yeah.
So to your point, yes, there are some things that are true for everyone, but different. We all face different things. We either need to talk to our kids about it because we have children, or we have older parents that don't want to talk to us about their money, and yet you kind of need to know, do you need my help, or I might need help from you. I need to have that conversation. How do I even open the door? We've never talked about money. Or my husband has been managing the money for so long, I'd like to be more involved, and he's resistant. How do I open that door? So that's what the remaining chapters are about. Either having a money date, talking to your spouse, talking to your children, talking to your parents. Everybody has someone in their life they want to talk to about money, but many of us don't know how to open the door to that conversation.
And it's a sad reality that it can often be the breakdown of relationships, can't it? Money issues.
Well, I hear all the time, I'm sure you hear it too, that 1 out of 3, the top 3 reasons that arguing about money is one of the top 3 reasons people break up. So I can guess what one of the other ones are. I'm not sure what the third one is, but people fight about money all the time. And, I want to give everyone who's listening, I want them to give themselves a break, because people will say, gosh, my husband and I fight about money all the time. But we're not always given the tools to be able to have that conversation. And everybody comes from a different money background. Hannah, I'm sure that you have a money story, a money background, as do I. And let's say I'm married to someone who is very frugal, where I might be very spendthrift. And we both are coming together to discuss, we want to buy a new car. And because I'm frugal, I think, let's get a Prius or a Honda Civic. Where maybe my husband is like, what are you talking about? We can afford a fancier car. And so you could see how there can be tension, and literally people are fighting about it when it's because we come from different money backgrounds.
Yeah.
And right. And so obviously we have different opinions, but we can find common ground. And I think being sympathetic to, oh, where are you coming from? Let's figure that out.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm frugal because I'm afraid I won't have enough. Right. So that's part of what I'm trying to get across is a little more sympathy to the people. Don't want to talk about money because it's so emotional.
Yeah.
And so be empathetic to that. Those
sure.
money backgrounds.
Yeah, it is. It's just having those conversations, and it's not that the frugal person is right or wrong, or the spendthrift person is right or wrong. It's just understanding where that behaviour comes from and why, and then you can sort of joke about it. You know, it can be something that's fun between you in the future. If one person, oh, my wife will probably want to get the cheaper one, and the wife will be, oh, my husband will probably want to get the expensive one, and it just becomes a bit of fun between you as opposed to a massive row.
Right. And thank you for using that word fun. You know, so many women, and again, I hate to generalize, but so many women are, I don't have a head for numbers. Oh gosh, that seems so boring. Frankly, money makes the world go round. I think it's pretty exciting. You know, I think money is a lot of fun, and it doesn't have to be a scary topic.
Yeah.
It's just, we can learn together. We can be stronger together.
Yeah.
We can teach each other.
Well, the book is called It's Time to Talk, and it's by Sheila Schroeder, who we've been chatting with, and it's available on our website, tre.radio. Sheila, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I really enjoyed chatting with you.